Hello animators, you alright? How's it going? As someone who teaches animation as a career, particularly to beginners and intermediates, I'm often asked how to make animations look smoother. Here's something I'd like to share with you to help you refine your animation process. It's what I call the Kibik method, and we'll get to the name in a bit. Essentially, it's all about small steps and planning your drawings. It's my light interpretation of the straight ahead and post-pose principle, which is where you either plan your action using keyframes, going from one pose to another pose, or you animate from beginning to end, frame by frame, straight ahead. So the Kibik method. Say you want to animate someone turning their head. You start with your keyframes. These are the strongest poses that will be the structure of your animation. Imagine you had to show an action on a signpost. What would be the pose you would show for that action? Think of it like that. You draw your first keyframe at the start of the action. Then you draw your next keyframe. Let's say it's at the end of the action. Keyframing helps you keep forms consistent, which is something that can be tricky if animating straight ahead without structure. Okay, beginning and end, got it. Now we want to break this down. We've got the two keyframes which show us where we're starting and where we're going to end up. Fab. What's the middle of this action going to be? Let's cut this action in half. Let's break it down. So this middle drawing is a breakdown. Breakdowns are fun. You can play around with what breakdowns look like, and this will depend on your reference, and we always use reference for character animation. It could be straight in the middle here, it could be higher up, or it could be lower down, for example. Okay, great. That's your breakdown, and it looks good and consistent with the two keyframes we have, which is keeping us grounded with form. We're getting there. Now we want to add in-betweens, which will make the action look smoother and smoother, and these will go in between your first keyframe and your breakdown and your last keyframe. There we go. Kibik. Keyframe, in-between, breakdown, in-between, keyframe. And the more in-betweens you add, the smoother the animation will look. And you can apply this to nearly any animation. Someone standing up from a chair. First keyframe is sitting, last is standing. The breakdown is, let's say, this leaning forward pose ready to lift. In-betweens to smooth out will be everything between those three drawings. But it can go further than that. Maybe you've got a longer action which needs more keyframes. Maybe someone turns their head and then looks shocked. First keyframe, middle keyframe, last keyframe. Now we'll have two breakdowns, halfway between turning and halfway between reacting. Then we add in-betweens throughout those 5 drawings. Kibik. And you can do this as much as you need to for however long the action is. Just keep planning those strong poses to hold up the structure, then break it down and add in-betweens. Easy peasy, mate. Something I like to do is play around with the texture of timing. I don't animate everything on 1s and I don't animate everything on 2s. Generally what I like to do as an animator is I'll animate fast action on 1s and slower action on 2s and 3s, and I feel it just gives it a nice textured look to it without it looking either too smooth or too stuttered. That's just how I work. Now, this process doesn't consider more advanced techniques such as dragging action like hair or clothing dragging behind the main motion, or secondary acting like doing something else while the main action is happening, but it's the start to making your animations look more structured, coherent and smooth. And the great thing is that this is a fundamental technique and isn't tied to any software. As long as you can add drawings and see them lightly from other frames, otherwise known as onion skin, you can do this in any way you wish, even with paper animation. So why don't you have a go, and you can show me the results on my Blue Sky account. Just reply to my pinned comment and maybe I'll leave some feedback. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me in all my endeavours, and I'll see you next time. Ta-da!